Okay. I'd like to call the meeting to order at 7:02. Members present?
We have Alyssa Hurd, Rob Lesson, myself, Joe Leggett, Kenny Baptiste, and Agent Dave Plachette.
Thank you. I want to remind everybody that this is being recorded for television. Okay, I'll get right on it. First, continued hearing for Joseph and Kerry Bombardier. Anybody here for that? You want to come up to the table, identify yourself, speak into the mics, please.
I'm Joe Bombardier.
I'm Kerry Bombardier.
Thank you. Okay, David?
20. Yes. 20.
We have three out of four.
That's okay.
Okay. He's in Florida for the winter.
All right. Guess nobody's checking his mail.
Okay, this project site is at 25 McKinley Street in the Briarwood area, and the project involves the demolition of an existing dwelling and the reconstruction of a new dwelling, and this is within a coastal flood zone. The existing 21 by 37-foot dwelling is to be removed, and a new 28 by 45-foot dwelling is proposed in coastal flood zone AE elevation 15. The project is not in the buffer zone to any other resource areas. There's no significant grade changes proposed. The new dwelling would be serviced by town water and sewer. So I would recommend the approval of the project with a negative determination number 2. And we had continued this hearing previously because we did not have the abutter cards, which have just been presented, so we're all set with that.
Okay, 7:04, Sandy has arrived. Sandy, take over his chair, please. Okay. All right, do you have anything to add? No?
No.
Questions from the board, Rob?
No
Joe?
questions?
Lisa? Anybody from the audience?
Seeing none, make a motion to close.
Joe's motion, seconded by Alicia. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Gonna make a motion to grant with a -2 determination.
Joe's motion, seconded by Alicia. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Set? Thank you.
Did you run over here?
You don't need any?
Just gotta catch your breath.
You have to check with Dave before you start. You gotta check with Dave before you start anything,
Okay,
all right?
okay.
You just approve.
Thank you.
First one, yeah.
You're welcome. I apologize. FinCom meeting lasted longer than I expected. Okay, next continued hearing is the Origo, how can I pronounce that? Orego Solar Systems. Please come forward and identify yourselves.
Hi, Stacy Minahan with Beals and Thomas.
This is a continuation. Mr. Bichette, read to the article.
Zach Farkas from Brigham.
Is this a new one?
No.
Since the last meeting, that's the most recent one.
I like these sizes. I think it's too dry.
So this project site is at 299 Farm to Market Road, and this project involves the installation of a solar array within the buffer zone to bordering vegetated wetland and to an inland bank. A 3.5 megawatt solar array is proposed in the buffer zone to existing cranberry bogs. The clearing for this project within the buffer zone has already been done at the site, which did not have any previous approval from the commission. So again, at this point, the area for the project has already been cleared. The proposal did originally show some work within the 50-foot no activity zone. They have since revised the plan to remove the majority of that work from the 50-foot no activity zone, but I understand from the engineer there might be a slight modification to that, which we will discuss in a little bit. The only work that would be in the 50-foot no activity zone that we had originally been aware of was the underground electrical lines, which would be installed within the existing bog roads. The project has been reviewed by the town engineer, and he did have a number of comments on the project. Those comments are in your mail folders. He did have some questions about the stormwater drainage for the project. So we do have a DEP file number for this project as well at this time, but at this moment I would recommend the commission continue the hearing until the town's engineer is satisfied with the design, as would be typical for any project that he's reviewing for the town. At this point, I don't believe there's been a chance for the applicant to respond to Mr. Rowley's comments, and so he has not been able to submit his final response at this point in time.
Zach, Stacy, anything to add? Have you had a chance to see this February 21st document?
Yes, and actually, it's dated February 21st, but it was sent to us, I think, 2 nights ago. We weren't holding out on you in terms of the responses. I think there might have just been an erroneous date at the top. So we have reviewed them. I've discussed them with Brago and with our design engineer. So the kind of first section of them addresses the planning board application somewhat specifically in terms of site plan versus special permit and some other narrative clarifications. There are some stormwater comments, as Dave mentioned. There's nothing certainly insurmountable. Many of them are kind of plan clarifications on the notes. In terms of the stormwater, I'd say the most substantive comment relates to on-site soil testing, which kind of typical with other projects we've done. We would plan to do that as a condition of permitting to confirm our assumptions. And I guess one clarification for this project, so there is no stormwater management system proposed. We've submitted a report that documents pre and post conditions match for stormwater runoff. This site is already cleared from prior agricultural activities, and so there's no
Most
change. I'm sorry?
For most part. You had some clearing within the 50 feet, correct?
Yes.
For most part, it was already cleared.
Yes, it was, the entire site was previously cleared. Is that, I'm not sure I'm following what you're saying.
Some within the 50-foot that hadn't been approved. A small portion.
Yes, and
Okay, I just wanted to make it clear that wasn't all clear prior to. It'd been cleared, but not all with permit.
Correct. My understanding is a permit had not been sought. My understanding it was done for agricultural bog sand.
Okay.
And I know I can't speak to the specifics of that, but.
Thank you. I won't interrupt again.
No, that's fine. I'd rather. It's better to clarify as we go along. So what we have proposed in terms of the grading for the site does create a lower area in the central portion of the site, largely to avoid the site draining directly to the bogs. But it is not, a formal stormwater basin. But that being said, we would still want to do on-site soil testing just as a best engineering practice to look at where the groundwater is and confirm our soil assumptions. And so that's the discussion that we're planning on having on Monday night with the planning board and with Mr. Rowley. With regard to other comments that he had made, just trying to think, or Dave, if there were any others that you had wanted me to touch on, but many of them were along those similar lines, just questions relating to assumptions and the soil testing. So nothing that we anticipate will change the site design or the layout of the panels. The one item I did want to mention, not with regard to Mr. Rowley's comments, but with the 50-foot no touch. So there is, on the revised plans that we submitted, a small area in the northwest portion of the site, here, where the grading does extend about 13 feet into the 50-foot no touch. I wasn't aware of that. I hadn't noticed it when I was before the commission before, so I had called Dave after the last hearing to give him a heads up about that. We are evaluating whether we can pull that back and still tie into existing grades. The other aspect of the 50-foot no touch, which may come into play based on Mr. Rowley's comments, is that for the equipment area in the south central portion of the site, there's an existing agricultural access road, and I'll get up in a minute and point to this area, but there's an existing agricultural access road, and we're proposing a gravel drive within the solar panel area. We hadn't proposed a formal connection between the two because it's drivable as is. If Mr. Rowley or the planning board require a formal connection, that is within the 50-foot no touch because it has to connect to the existing agricultural road, which is within the 50-foot no touch. So that area is located here. So that's to be determined, but I wanted to mention it for the commission's information.
Jack, anything to add?
No, I don't. Happy to answer any questions if the board has any.
Ms. Bichette, you had a question?
Yes, could you speak also to the issue of the battery component of this project?
Sure. So the energy storage component of this project is not unlike the energy storage component of the 3 previous projects that were approved by this board in recent months. It is a lithium-ion battery that is basically a bolt-on to the solar project. To take a quick step back, solar obviously has become more and more prevalent throughout the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. As we are building up renewable energy assets, one of the big issue is with what's called intermittency. When the sun's not shining or the wind's not blowing and people need power, how do we get it? And vice versa, when there's plenty of power to be produced and there's not a lot of load, what happens to those electrons? So energy storage has long been a perfect partner to renewable energy. And with the opening of the Smart Incentive Program, which is the successor program to the SREC program, there is a section that helps with energy storage as a component of the PV system. Now, practically speaking, the energy storage is viewed as ancillary to the solar project, helping it interact with the grid, helping it interact with the functionality of the system itself. It consists of basically a shipping container, and within that shipping container are racks, and within those racks are lithium-ion batteries. Those batteries are wired in series, very similar to how the solar modules are wired, and with those batteries, they have a separate inverter. Energy is stored DC, just like solar panels, so you need a mechanism to convert that from DC to AC power. So basically, it's like a separate, very contained renewable energy facility that stores power when it's not needed on the grid and provides it when it is needed. So it's a great solution, and I think if you haven't seen them beyond the Borrego projects that have been before this board over the past couple months, I think it'll be basically ubiquitous with solar as we move forward through the next 5 years or so.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, and also, what's the nature of the containment of that?
Sure. So from a hazardous materials standpoint, unlike vehicle batteries or electric vehicle batteries, there is zero fluid in these batteries. They are 100% solid state. So as time goes by, heating, cooling, expansion, and contraction of joints, there's no fluid that's within the batteries that needs to be contained. So there is no scenario where a battery per se could fail and leak some type of hazardous material, unlike a car or electric vehicle battery. The only liquid that we're introducing to this site is associated with the air conditioning, a refrigerant, very similar to a standard air conditioner that basically keeps the system cool. That's a very small amount, and it's a very common material. In a catastrophic event where there was a fire at the system, there's an internal fire suppression mechanism within the shipping container, or the apparatus that holds the entire shipping container. That's a pressurized powder that turns to basically a foam when it interacts with oxygen, pulls all the oxygen out of here, out of the container, helps reduce the fire and coats everything. So again, no liquid, nothing to seep through. If for some reason that second line of defense were to fail, then the shipping container itself, it's not actually a shipping container, it looks like one, but can basically burn for multiple hours without any type of breach. And the fire department can spray as much water as they want. For other projects, we do trainings with the fire departments for these projects. And basically the direction is to if there is a catastrophic event, let nature take its course. It'll burn out. There's nothing that will be or is available to be leaked into the groundwater, into the soil, into the bogs, anything there. It's a very, very stable technology, and unlike some other technologies like flow batteries and whatnot that have a lot of moving parts and moving liquids, these are as stationary as can be.
Thank you.
No further questions?
Any questions on the board? Anybody
No
in the
questions.
audience? I'm seeing none. We have a continuance until, when's the next meeting?
20th, March 20th?
3:20? So that we can get the responses from Mr. Rowley and the planning board?
But no other comments from this board that you guys would like to see us work into the plans? I think there's that one small area that we're trying to decide if it's worthwhile touching, but other than that, we've pushed everything, as we talked about last meeting, we pushed everything north.
Are that
Yeah, you'll
areas
want to
already-
move that.
Excuse me?
You will want to move that.
Move that.
The northwest grading, are you referring to?
You got room to actually shuffle it down this way.
Yeah, I mean, that's the basic conundrum we're in. It's in the 50-foot, it's been disturbed. I think we'd like to go in there and clean it up, but again, there's a difference between more work and a 50-foot no-touch and not. So I think that's general direction from the board would be appreciated.
I see no one from the audience, and I'll take a motion to...
Motion to continue to 3:20?
I have a motion to continue. I heard a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? See you in 2 weeks.
See you in 2
Thank
weeks.
you.
Thank you all.
It's after 7:15. We're going to start our public hearings. Who has the announcements? You two, please.
Town of Wareham Conservation Commission Memorial Town Hall. Notice of public hearing. Pursuant to the provisions of the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act, General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Wareham Wetland Protective Bylaw, Division 6, a public hearing will be held in room 320, Wareham Multi-Service Center, 48 Marion Road, Wareham, Mass, on Wednesday, March 6, 2019, at 7:15 p.m. on the request for determination of applicability for Mass Department of Transportation, Highway Division, District 5, care of Mass Department of Transportation, Andrea Coates, 1000 County Road, Taunton, Mass. 02780, for tree trimming located along Route 25 after the I-95 interchange at mile marker .6 to mile marker 3.4 near Glen Charlie Road, Wareham, Mass.
Thank you. Please identify yourselves for the records.
For the record, I am Michael Clements, the Assistant Environmental Engineer for District 5, Taunton.
Thank you. Mr. Pichette, please.
The project site is on Route 25, between Route I-95 and Glen Charlie Road. And on this stretch of highway, it's proposed to do some resurfacing and vegetation removal in the buffer zone to bordering vegetated wetland at certain parts of the roadway. The vegetation would be cleared approximately 15 feet from the edge of the pavement back for vegetation management purposes. Some other improvements will be made in terms of catch basin grates being reset and so forth. Most of the areas within the work area, the vegetation has already been cut back close to the desired limit, but in certain areas, the growth is encroached into the setback limit, and so that vegetation will be cut back to the standard that's required. Trees would be flush cut to the ground. There's no stump removal proposed as part of the work. Again, this is basically normal maintenance for the highway, Mass Highway, so I would recommend the approval of the work with a negative determination number 3.
Michael, anything to add?
He pretty much covers it. It is, the roadway work itself is actually exempt under the Wetlands Protection Act. It is really the fact that we're here for just the clearing of brush and trees that may be within the 15, and actually, if there is no guardrail, we may extend that out to 20 feet. I think on the detail shows that. We also go 20 feet up, but that is, the reason why we do this is it's a safety issue for us. We need to provide a clear zone for the highway, for those people that, happen to drive off the highway. It gives them an opportunity to, hopefully maintain some control before hitting something that could cause some catastrophic damage to them or their vehicles. That's really the gist of it. Like I said, it's really just the tree trimming beyond, and it's beyond, the exemption actually allows us to trim, to 6 feet off of our roadway edge. We want to go, again, to the 15 to 20, depending on whether we have guardrail there. That really allows us to maintain, hopefully, a safe, clear zone for the...
Question from the board?
Nope.
So will be, for trees, you're going to clear cut and leave the stumps?
Yeah, we will not be grubbing. It's just, flush cut the trees and the overgrowth, the briars, whatnot, would be trimmed back to, just to ground surface.
You're going to be using a buzz saw to get all through those?
I would expect that would be the case. The roadway work usually is left up to the contractor. We actually have specified an item for 4, a foreman and 3 workers, so they could conceivably do it, by hand. But with this type of work, it generally lends itself quite easily to a machine that can.
Yep, and it looks pretty ugly, but after a year, you never know they did it. Anybody in the audience want to speak to this project? Seeing none?
Motion to close
I
the
have a
hearing.
motion to close the hearing. I have a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained?
Thank you.
Motion to grant with a -3 determination.
I have
Second.
a motion. I have a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Thank you.
Thank you.
Notice of public hearing pursuant to the provisions of the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act, General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Wareham Wetland Protected Bylaw, Division 6. A public hearing will be held in room 320, Wareham Multi-Service Center, 48 Marion Road, Wareham, Mass. On Wednesday, March 6, 2019, at 7:15 p.m. on the request for determination of applicability for Louis Guaman, care of Land Planning, Inc., 1115 Main Street, Hanson, Mass. 023241, to replace the failed septic system and demolition and reconstruction of a portion of an existing dwelling located on Assessors Map 91, Lot 1008B, 85 Fearing Hill Road, Wareham, Mass.
Thank you. Please identify yourself for the record.
Yes, I'm Stephen Rye with Land Planning. I'm here on behalf of the owner, Louis Goldman, who's in the audience here tonight.
Do you have green cards? You
I have cards for you.
butter cards? And Mr. Bichette will read to the project.
So the project is a,
Mr. Bichette will go
Okay,
first.
okay.
Then you have your turn. I'm eating it. Thank you.
Okay, the project site is 85 Faring Hill Road, and the project involves upgrading a septic system and demolition and reconstruction of a dwelling and this is partially in the buffer zone to bordering vegetated wetland at this site. The existing septic system is to be replaced with a new Title V system, and the septic tank work would be approximately 80 feet from the edge of the wetland. Also, the existing house, which is 28 by 40, is to be demolished, and a new dwelling is to be constructed in the same location and footprint. A corner of that dwelling is also within the buffer zone to the wetland. There's no grade changes proposed. Hay bales are proposed between the work and the resource area as shown on the plan. And again, there's only a very small amount of work that's actually in the buffer zone for this project. So I would recommend the approval of the project with a negative determination number 3.
Stephen, your turn. Anything else you'd like to add?
No, just that there is, like you said, there's a limited amount of work, about 550 square feet within the buffer zone. We have outlined it with erosion controls, and the demolition of the house will take place. It's been approved by the Historic Commission tonight, and the Board of Health plan was approved by the Board of Health earlier this week, so.
Questions on the board?
I have no questions.
Anybody in the audience would like to speak for or against this project?
Seeing none, make a motion to close.
I have a motion and I have a second. All in favor of closing? Aye. Opposed, abstain, the hearing's closed.
Make a motion to grant with a -3 determination.
I have a motion to grant with a -3.
Second.
I have a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstained? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
See Mr. Bichette before you start any work.
Absolutely.
Notice of public hearing pursuant to the provisions of the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act, General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Wareham Wetland Protected Bylaw, Division 6. The public hearing will be held in room 320, Wareham Multi-Service Center, 48 Marion Road, Wareham, Mass. On Wednesday, March 6, 2019, at 7:15 p.m. on the request for determination of applicability for Wareham Retail Management LLC, care of 5 Point Engineering, Inc., 45 Dan Road, Suite 140, Canton, Mass. 02021, to construct 3 standalone retail office buildings, associated parking and associated utilities and drainage collection system located on Assessor's Map 87, portion of lot 1000A1C, 1 Seth F. Toby Road, Wareham, Mass.
Please identify yourself for the record.
Derek Redgate, civil engineer from High Point Engineering.
Do we have the abutter cards? You have them?
Unfortunately, the butter cards are in an envelope on my desk, and I apologize. I do have a photograph of them on my phone if you'd like to see it, and I request if I could get them delivered by tomorrow morning.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Bichette will read to the project.
Project site, again, is 1 Seth Toby Road, and this is the property between the existing Walmart and Cranberry Highway. This application is being filed as part of the site plan review requirements under the zoning bylaw. The project is to construct commercial buildings and associated parking lots, stormwater drainage structures, and utilities. The proposed work is outside of any areas subject to Conservation Commission jurisdiction under both the state and local wetland bylaw. So therefore, I would recommend the issuance of a negative determination number 1 and number 6, which basically state that the project is outside of any Conservation Commission jurisdiction.
The abutters, how many cards were there?
There were 11 cards. We received 10 back.
Any questions on the board for the project?
Nope.
No questions.
Anybody in the audience speak for or against this project? The question for the board is, do you want to approve pending the receipt of the green cards, or would you?
You said you got a picture of it on your phone?
I have a photo, yeah, but I'd be happy to share that with you.
All right, and we can make a contingent on them actually reaching Dave's office?
Since we,
Dave?
Can I approach the board with the picture?
yes, please.
Actually, show Dave. What?
on the date they were sent out?
Sure I can read it.
First, okay.
As long as it's understood that no documents will be sent out to the
Thank you. There was no comments on the, from the audience.
Can make a motion to close?
I have a motion and second to close the hearing.
Make a motion to grant with a -1 and a -6 determination, and this is contingent upon Dave receiving the green cards, and then he'll submit the forms to you to actually begin work.
Yes, I agree.
I have a motion, I have a second, all in favor? Aye, opposed, abstained?
Second.
We're waiting for your green cards.
Great, thank you.
We're taking turns.
Notice of public hearing pursuant to the provisions of the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act, General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Wareham Wetland Protective Bylaw, Division 6. A public hearing will be held in room 320, Wareham Multi-Service Center, 48 Marion Road, Wareham, Mass. On Wednesday, March 6, 2019, at 7:15 p.m. on the notice of intent for Town of Wareham Municipal Maintenance Department, care of GAF Engineering, Inc., 266 Main Street, Wareham, Mass. 02571, to construct an infiltration basin with a sediment forebay located on Assessor's Map 50F, Lot B7, 13 Smith Ave, Wareham, Mass.
Madam Chairman, for the record, my name is Bob Rogers with GAF Engineering.
And Bob, you're going to give Mr. Pichette those green suckers, aren't you?
Yes.
You'll share. When you're ready, Mr. Pichette, can you read to the project?
That's root beer.
This project, town project, is proposed at the corner of Pilgrim Ave and Smith Ave in the Swifts Beach area. And the project involves the installation of a stormwater structure
It's in Beach Way this way.
in the buffer zone to a salt marsh and also within the coastal flood zone at this site. Stormwater detention basin is proposed to alleviate an existing drainage problem in this area. To alleviate road flooding at this location, it's proposed to install a sediment forebay and then a detention basin on the side of the road to take stormwater runoff. The work area is approximately 35 feet by 70 feet. Vegetation in this area would be cleared and the detention basin constructed in that area as shown on the plan. The limit of work would be approximately 50 feet from the edge of the salt marsh. There would be a paved waterway that would direct runoff into this stormwater system. Hay bales and silt fence would be installed between the work and the resource area as indicated on the plan. We do have a DEP file number for this project, so I would recommend the issuance of the order of conditions with the standard conditions and the added condition that the stormwater structures be maintained according to the operation and maintenance plan, which is found on the site plan itself, and that this be a continuing condition.
I'm sorry, Dave, one more time. The standard conditions plus that they maintain it as stated on the plan?
Yes, they have an operation and maintenance plan notes on the site plan, so that's what they need to follow going forward.
Thank you. Bob, your
Just
turn.
a couple of things, Madam Chairman. So, you know, the commission had previously approved, or the commission had previously issued an order of conditions for the repaving of Pilgrim Avenue. And so this notice of intent is intended to give us the ability to correct this area. I mean, there's a pretty, a large area at this intersection that floods every time it rains, and then this time of year, it's just a big skating rink, if you will. So, you know, we coordinated with municipal maintenance to come up with a design for a surface basin, forebay and basin, to correct that problem. The one thing that we wanted to be able to coordinate with the commission to make things a little bit easier for municipal maintenance is that we'd like to flag the limit of the erosion controls in the field so that municipal maintenance can cut the trees before they install the hay bales and silt fence. It's pretty thick in some of those areas, and so it would be very difficult to install the hay bales and silt fence, you know, before the clearing takes place. And so I just wanted to request that if we could coordinate between Mr. Menard and Mr. Pichette to put flags at the proposed hay bale location, so Mr. Pichette could review that, and then municipal maintenance personnel could cut the trees and get them out of the way, and just make it much less labor intensive, a lot easier to install the hay bales and tow the silt fence and put that in properly.
Did you say hay bales and silk fence?
Yes, it's earthwork involved, and so we think that's appropriate.
I just didn't write it in my notes.
Okay.
Anything else?
No, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Questions on the board?
I have no questions.
Anybody in the audience for or against this project? Seeing none,
Motion to close?
I have a motion to close the hearing.
Second.
I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, abstained. The hearing's closed.
All right. Make a motion to grant with standard conditions with the added condition of being ongoing maintenance as listed on the plan. And we'll allow the clearing along the hay bale line before the hay bales are actually there to allow that to get in there.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have a motion.
Second.
I have a second. All in favor? Aye. Abstain? Negative? Yes or no? Never mind, I lost. For, against, abstain, we're all set. So before you start, see Dave.
Yes, certainly. Thank you
Thank you.
again.
Okay, next one, please.
Notice of public hearing pursuant to the provisions of the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act, General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Wareham Wetland Protective Bylaw, Division 6. A public hearing will be held in room 320, Wareham Multi-Service Center, 48 Marion Road, Wareham, Mass. On Wednesday, March 6, 2019, at 7:15 p.m. on the notice of intent for Josephine Sula and Susan Kula, care of J.C. Engineering, Inc., 2854 Cranberry Highway, East Wareham, Mass. 02538. To construct a single-family dwelling, deck, porch, in-ground pool, driveway, shed, install a septic system, and associated utilities located on Assessor's Map 106, Lot 31, 11 Pond Edge Trail, Wareham, Mass.
Thank you.
Good evening, Brad Bertolo, JC Engineering.
Thank you. Mr. Bichette?
The project site is, as mentioned, was 11 Pond Edge Trail, and the project involves the construction of a single-family dwelling, garage, in-ground pool, and site work in the buffer zone to wetlands at this site. A 30 by 70-foot dwelling with attached 24 by 40-foot garage is proposed. The garage would be approximately 57 feet from the edge of the wetland. The limit of work on the site is approximately 30 feet to the edge of the wetland. Also proposed is a 16 by 32-foot in-ground swimming pool with a patio apron as shown, and this would be approximately 85 feet from the edge of the wetland. There is some significant grading proposed on the property to try to flatten out the lot for the house location. The majority of this lot is proposed to be cleared. There is also a proposal to put geothermal wells as part of this construction for heating purposes. The proposed septic system is outside the buffer zone to the wetland, Hay bales and silt fence will be installed between the work and the resource area as shown. We do have a DEP file number for this project, so I would recommend the approval of the project with the issuance of the order of conditions, with the standard conditions and the added condition that the pool water not be discharged towards the wetland area. Maintenance is required.
Thank you. Brad, anything to add?
Yeah, that basically covers it. The site does have varying topo changes between roughly 10 foot between your high and low points, so that's the reason why there's some grading proposed.
Questions from the board?
I have none.
Are they actually putting in the geothermal, or is that just left open? Do they have to come back to
No, that's part of the proposed project.
the geothermal?
I spoke with the owner today to try to get some specifics. It was a wish. He wants to do it, but may not do it because of budget, the
Right.
cost of doing it. It is located outside 100 feet, and if he does it, it'd be going through the building permit stage as part of that, so I think that the office or the staff has a chance to review that at that time, if there's questions or concerns, because there's a number of different types of systems that you can use. He was told to have 2 wells placed 15 feet apart, about 15 feet from the house, so that's about as much information he has on it.
So your proposed irrigation well?
Correct, yep. The site's on town water, so to avoid using town water for watering.
Just the in-ground pool will be filled from an outside vendor
Usually, yes.
as opposed to drawing down the town water?
Can make that a condition, yep.
Sorry?
Excuse me, Sandy, or the well, on his irrigation well, so not using that either.
Well, the irrigation well does a job on the water table.
Yes, I would put it in a condition. I don't think the groundwater may or may not be actually suitable for the pool water.
So we could add to the condition that an outside vendor will provide the water for the pool, and the pool will not be drained anywhere near our wetland.
It'd be cheaper anyways to do it that way. Electricity alone to pump a well to fill that pool would be
Any
outrageous.
questions in the audience for or against this project? Seeing none,
Make a motion to close the hearing?
I have a motion to close.
Second.
I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained? Hearing's
Sandy, do you really want that in here as an extra condition?
I think we should add to this condition the source and the,
Okay, I'll let you make it then.
Chair can't make it. Kenny, will you?
Yeah, motion to grant, with the additional stipulations that the pool water discharge be not done in the wetlands, and that the pool be filled only by a mobile outside source.
I have outside source.
Second?
I have a motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained? We are done. See Mr. Jet before any work is started on it.
Thank you.
Okay, back to continued hearings. Russell Motto. You want to get to that project?
Yes.
new ones. Right? Or these are all new ones, right? And please identify yourself for the record again, please.
Again, Brad Bertola with JC Engineering.
Okay, Mr. Bichette?
The project site is at 71 Onset Ave, and the project involves the construction of a single-family dwelling in the buffer zone to bordering vegetated wetland and within a coastal flood zone. The proposed limit of work at this site is approximately 30 feet to the edge of the wetland. A 26 by 26 foot dwelling with attached 24 by 24 foot garage is proposed. There is some significant grade changes proposed at the site. At the last meeting when we talked about this, we asked about the amount of yards of material that would have to be brought in and if that fill could be reduced. The plan was looked at by the engineer and they did submit a revised plan which did shift the location of the house, which made it possible to reduce the amount of fill. Also, we had not had the Board of Health approve the septic system at the time, which has since been done. We do have a DEP file number for this project. I did have a question or concern. Again, even though the fill has been reduced, there still is quite a bit of fill to be placed on this lot. And the way it's set up right now is the proposed driveway would just pitch water from the driveway back out onto the street. So I talked to Mr. Bertolo about that issue, and so wanted to hear some comments on that. And of course about the reduction of the fill, and if that's as much as they can reduce it, or is there any option for additional reduction in the fill amount on the site?
I did speak with the applicant, and we did adjust the orientation of the house and pulled it away from the wetland. He was trying to maintain some buffer off of Onset Ave, so he didn't want to get too close to Onset Ave. But with the orientation, it did provide at least 10 to 15 more feet of buffer off of the wetland in the back. We changed the side entrance garage to a front entrance garage, which shortened the driveway up, or the amount of pavement, and the driveway is roughly, 46 to 50 feet long. Looking at the grading, some of it, would drain out into the street, and some of it appears to would drain kind of in that swale in that natural tree section that's between Onset Ave and the grading of the house. They're trying to keep some buffer and some existing trees there. In doing so, we did reduce about a third of the amount of fill that was proposed. So, I mean, you'd want the driveway to at least have some positive pitch away from the house, so you wouldn't have any flooding into the house. And the grade in front of the house, what compared to the street grade, is pretty much level off of Susan Road and only a couple feet higher than the grades out on Onset Ave. So there's some fill out there, but it's not gonna raise the system up the height of the yard too high.
I don't have any further questions.
Questions on the board?
Just got a question, Dave. Are you comfortable as far as flooding might happen in the house next door? Because it did take out a lot of the material they were going to fill with.
Right, they did reduce it, and they are showing a swale sort of on that side of the property. That's just gonna have to make sure that those grades are constructed as shown, so that way you do have that area
Okay.
for that water to be passed into.
Okay, I have no other questions.
There was quite, if you look at the site, there was some issue with the water coming off of Susan Road because the next door neighbor put in some type of drainage to take, as it pooled at the end of their driveway, so there must have been some issue in the past.
Yeah, they ran a pipe that kind of discharges into this property that,
And it will continue to discharge into this property, correct?
at the
Beyond the
moment,
house.
yeah.
Beyond the
that's-
house.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's out past into the area that we're trying to save as trees, so it wouldn't impact any work on this property.
Now, the property is has a lot of trash on it. I've noticed a lot of discarded items on this property, including, it looks like, a bunch of asphalt. Has that been noticed?
The only thing we've noticed is a lot of encroachment from the neighbor, so that's as much as I know.
Chunks of asphalt buried in the leaves, but just make sure
I
that...
wasn't aware of it. We didn't notice anything during perk tests, but I could,
But there is a lot of debris, trash. What was old, what do you want to call, barbecue things and whatever, so
yeah,
that
I
will
saw
all be
an old
cleaned up.
grill out there, yeah.
Okay. No questions on the board. Anybody in the audience for or against this project wants to speak to it? I'm seeing none.
Motion to close the hearing?
I have a motion to close the hearing. I have a second. All in favor? Opposed? Abstained?
Dave, what was your recommendation again?
I would recommend approval with the standard conditions. I think that was pretty much it on this with the change in the plan and the grade change, and they did get the septic approved by the Board of Health, so.
Okay, I'll make that motion to approve with the standard stipulations.
Motion, I heard a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? So, Brad, let them know the standard of conditions says low nitrogen when they're going to reseed all that property in front of the house.
Yep,
So
I
please
understand.
remind them
That's
that that's our standard.
Yep.
Thank you, and see Dave before you start any work.
Thank you.
It's nice having that in the standard conditions, isn't it?
Yes, so I don't have to speak so much.
That'll never
This didn't stop me, did it? Next. LDE Holdings. Please come forward and identify yourselves.
Jesse Pitts with Trade Routes.
I'm Bill Madden from GAF Engineering, here on behalf of Trade Routes and LDE Holdings.
Is this a new plan?
I have half-size plans.
New plans.
Well, they're the ones that were prepared from the
what?
last hearing.
Okay. They're not new, so if you want
got mine.
to pass them out. Anybody need new ones from what came out last week?
Thank you.
So, listen, so Kenny,
I'll share with you.
I can share with Joe.
You don't need the big one, listen? No, you sure?
Do you need more?
we'll share. Okay. Mr. Bichette will read to the project.
The project site is at 6 Thatcher Lane in the industrial park, and the project involves the construction of an addition to a commercial building, parking lot, and stormwater drainage system in the buffer zone to bordering vegetated wetland. A 75 by 110-foot commercial building addition is proposed, and this would be approximately 61 feet from the edge of the wetland. The wetland line was checked and no changes were made to the line. The plan is showing new development within the 50-foot no-activity zone in terms of tree clearing and the construction of the stormwater drainage structures. It was my recommendation at the last meeting that the plan should be modified to remove any new development within the 50-foot no-activity zone. The proposed drainage basin should be relocated or use some other system to achieve that recommendation of no new work in the 50-foot no activity zone. Mr. Rowley, the town engineer, has also reviewed this and did have some similar comments relative to that issue. At the last meeting, we continued the hearing and asked that the 50-foot no activity zone be marked out on the site along with the proposed alterations so that the commission members could see where those alterations would be. Mr. Madden did have that done, and I know some of the members took a look at that. So we do have a DEP file number for this project, but again, it is still my recommendation, as was previous, to modify the plan to remove the new proposed work from the 50-foot no activity zone.
Mr. Madden, anything to add?
Well, with respect, I'll start with Charlie's letter. We did go through Charlie's letter, and he had two issues. Well, he had several issues. The most important ones, at least from the stormwater management side of things, the way we have the project designed, was the separation from the seasonal high groundwater table. We modified the design of the subsurface structure, which handles all the roof runoff from the proposed building, and the elevation of the bioretention cell, or the exfiltrating rain garden. We changed that elevation as well, so we're able to meet the 2-foot groundwater separation in each one of those instances. The plans that you have do reflect those changes. There was another comment that Charlie made, and I'm addressing these first because these are really conservation-related matters. Just to digress this a bit, this project is considered a redevelopment project because the site has been previously developed. So under the wetlands regulations, there's a provision that we can do work in on a site, provided that we improve existing conditions at the end of the day, and that's what we have done. And I explained that last week, and I'll explain it again if you want to hear the narrative on that. But getting back to what I was saying about Charlie's things. The groundwater table is one. The turret that we use on the rain garden, we have a, Charlie termed that as a proprietary structure relative to stormwater management. And really that device is a pre-treatment device. A proprietary structure is a treatment BMP. And what we're proposing is a pre-treatment BMT to remove the coarse sediment from the stormwater discharge prior to it entering into the stormwater management basin. For your files, I just give you the EPA handout on that turret that they have, that we're using for this particular job. They now don't prefer us to use a stone infiltration trench or, a sediment forebay similar to that on it. So we selected this, but it's an EPA-approved device, and we feel it fills the bill with respect to pre-treatment for our bioretention cell. The second thing that we talked about is that since the project is redevelopment, there's provisions within the wetland bylaw, the town bylaw, that allows us to request a waiver from that separation from the Conservation Commission. That's what we're asking for. I took and made some excerpts from the wetland regulation so that you could understand where we were coming from and hopefully agree with our position on it, because we think it's important to note that where it is, this is from the bylaw, if you wouldn't mind passing that down, it's just highlighted on the second page. We think that this site really sets itself up for redevelopment. It's a situation where this building was built in I think the early 80s, and with no stormwater management whatsoever. So for 30 years, you've had unmitigated stormwater leaving that site and discharging into the neighboring bordering vegetated wetlands. So certainly that isn't the best set of circumstances. So we thought that it would be reasonable to improve existing conditions by implementing to the maximum extent practicable, a reasonable stormwater management system on the site. That's what's required under redevelopment, under stormwater management regulations, and we would maintain that that's pretty much what's required under your bylaw. So when we talk about the waiver that we're requesting on the 50-foot no activity zone, under the buffer zone section, this is the second page, item number 1, it says redevelopment sites that are currently paved or altered with other impervious surfaces within the buffer zone. So the commission may waive or reduce the no activity zone for a redevelopment site that is currently paved. Doesn't say that it's entirely paved, it just says that it's paved. So in this instance, our site is paved, we are seeking to redevelopment. Second part of that, we looked at it like as a couple of part test. So if it's redevelopment, the commission has that opportunity, should they see it appropriate to grant that waiver for work in the 50-foot zone. So a portion of that exception, it says projects that projects in its judgment, such a reduction is necessary to accommodate a project that will have an overall benefit to the public and to the environment. And it says such as a sewer expansion project or wildlife enhancement project. It doesn't say solely for a project such as that. It leads one to believe, at least my interpretation of it, is that as long as we accommodate some improvements of this in the site, that would have an overall environmental benefit, that the commission could grant that waiver. What we maintain is that by providing enhanced groundwater recharge through the roof infiltration system that's proposed, that is a positive benefit. That's a requirement under the stormwater handbook that we have to do. We have to do that for redevelopment. We have to meet that standard. Another standard is to eliminate total suspended solids to the maximum extent practicable. And that's why we chose to design a small exfiltrating bioretention basin with that turret that I gave you as the pre-treatment device on it. So now we're able to collect our stormwater that's not infiltrated into the ground, treat it before it gets into our bioretention cell, and then exfiltrate that stormwater into the ground, enhancing groundwater recharge, and at the same time reducing our peak rates of flow and our peak rates of flow and our total volume that we're discharging from the site. So just from a stormwater management point of view, there's two significant environmental benefits that result from this redevelopment, and that's consistent with stormwater management for a redevelopment project, what we have to do. So that's why I just put this out to you so that you could see what we were reading and how we were interpreting the language in the bylaw and trying to make it work with this particular site. We think it's consistent. We think that the commission, if they were so inclined, could grant that waiver from that 50-foot no activity zone to allow the work that we have shown on the plan to proceed. The other thing that we want to note is that the parking, those of you that have been out there that have seen the site and seen where we marked out that 50-foot no activity zone, it's a large expanse of bituminous paving on that site that's to be removed. There's about 2,500 square feet of existing pavement on that site within the 50-foot no activity zone. We're reducing that to 700 square feet. So we're reducing the impervious nature of the site by almost 3/4. It's 73% reduction in impervious surface within the 50-foot no activity zone. So those are the reasons that we think that we're on point with our design, and it really makes the project work the way the applicant would like to see it work. And at the same time, we believe it fulfills the requirement of the bylaw and of the wetlands protection regulation for redevelopment. So that's really where we are with it. We did look at another, you know, I did mention the last time, I did draw another plan. I showed what we would do if we can't build the building, if we can't work in the 50-foot no activity zone. And I can show you the plan that we came up with, because what it involves is the addition of 6 parking spaces all outside the 100-foot buffer zone, and it does not include any roof infiltration. It includes no stormwater management. It leaves the site exactly the way it is, with the exception of adding 6 parking spaces for the retail element of the dispensary. That's what we would have to do. We think that it's more responsible to handle the project the way we'd like to do it. It certainly fulfills the client's desire to build what he'd like to build out there. I think it is a little bit of give and take between the commission and the applicant. Granted, we're looking to put forth a good design to achieve some environmental benefit, as well as to achieve the goals of the project. So that's where we are with respect to the request on that waiver. And really, everything hinges on the waiver. If we don't get the waiver, then, you know, I guess most of the things that we're talking about have really no bearing on our discussion, and we would just have to revise our plan and, you know, resubmit it to conservation. The only thing that we'd be doing that would be in the jurisdiction of conservation in that instance would be installing the security fence. And another little thing that comes up under the wetlands protection regulations, minor activities require no permit. Minor activities states fencing as a minor activity. So we would maintain that if we had to secure the site with security fencing, we could come back before the commission with an RDA to do that work. And, well, we could come with an RDA, and you could tell us maybe we need a notice. But it really changes the complexion from a more environmentally driven stormwater management program and development plan to one that just works completely around the regulation. And I don't think that's what, we'd prefer not to do that, and I think the plan as proposed is the best plan.
Thank you, and I appreciate you taking the time to modify, to show us the 50-foot no activity zone, to mark off where the fences are, and to mark off the parameter of the particular basin. My comment is, my boots were not tall enough to go to where some of the fencing is going to go because of the standing water. I mean, you're asking to go through water in order to put in a fence.
You know, it's frozen ground conditions now. We have a lot of ice, we have a lot of rain, we have melting, we have terrible conditions, but you're right, there is standing water out there in some areas.
Where the fences, where some section of the fence is
yes.
going next to the basin.
Yep.
It was, that's awful wet. Okay. Jesse, anything to add?
Not at this moment.
Okay, questions on the board? I'll start at the other end.
No.
More questions? Go.
Bill, thanks for doing that. I did get down there today. Almost didn't think I was going to be able to see pavement, but
I plowed that yesterday for you, so.
I thought you were going to say you shoveled it. Okay, now there's going to be proper grading and there's going to be curbing around there, so basically everything's getting diverted to the retention pond area, right?
Correct.
Okay. And what were you saying briefly about the fence when I was reading in here about something else?
What about the DEP considers it a minor activity was?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a section in the wetland regulations that talk about minor activities that when they occur in the buffer zone, a permit or further review by the Conservation Commission would not be required. Your bylaw trumps that condition, so we know that we need to be there, but it's under 10.02 in the regulation.
No, it's just that I had the same concerns as our chair when it comes to the fence. I have no other questions.
Kenny?
The standing water right now, I mean, it's going to be a little high anyway, it's above flood too. It's winter time. I don't have any problem with that.
Those bogs?
Yes. Yeah.
Their neighbor?
Anything else? You're up.
always have a problem with disturbing the ground. I like the quality of offering or something in place of it. And I don't know where, reasonable rationality line stands on this, so. Not sure. Yeah, sugar's down. I'm on the fence, so it's just a, I think I haven't been here long enough where I've seen enough of these that know what the give and take is. I hate opening Pandora's box. And I don't know if this does that or not. You know what I mean? And you mentioned it last time we were here. So I did see the site. Unfortunately, I didn't get there after you drew the lines, but
No, if I could just interject a thought, I mean, I understand. I don't think it sets precedent, because I think each project gets taken for its own merits, and we weigh the pluses and we weigh the minuses with each one. Some projects might have, I know that I received a waiver once before on the 50-foot no-activity zone for a solar project in town from the commission here. That was the only other time that I recall asking for the waiver and actually receiving it. And I don't think if we were really skimping on stormwater management and weren't really looking at a couple of different elements, I think it might be harder for me to present the project in the manner that I'm doing. I think that it's a fair assessment, and it's a fair trade-off, if you want to call it a trade-off here. I mean, you know, particularly when we look at the character of that wetland, where it sits on the face of the earth right now, how it was created originally, and you know, I provided you a picture from the 70s that showed it as a sand pit, and I think that we've been able to identify what really went on out there and where that water originated from. You know, where it originated from is from a development further up gradient, and there was a ditch that was constructed in there, and the water runs down the site. And you know, does some of the cranberry operations that occurred there over time, does that have something to do with it? I mean, it's a deeply disturbed and altered site. If it was a pristine wetland that had not been altered, I think that I'd have a difficult time coming in here and in making the type of points that I'm making now. And you know, I know that a wetland is a wetland is a wetland, and the character and the quality doesn't really matter as long as it qualifies as a wetland. And I get that and understand that as well.
yeah, I'm not totally convinced that the quality doesn't matter. Because, like you were saying, if it was pristine, never touched before, I'd see the line more clear. So,
Yep.
what do they have to say?
Well, I've made my comments already. I would say that I don't agree with Mr. Madden's assessment of the bylaw. I don't think those references that were pointed out are relative to this particular type of a project. As I said also previously, there can be modifications made. They may not be the modifications that the applicant wants, because they want what they want. So that's what's being put forth before the commission. So that's the issue. The applicant wants what they want, and this board is supposed to review that and apply the bylaws and the regulations and make a judgment on it relative to that. So I don't really have anything further to say other than that.
I guess that leads me to, you know, there's some obvious changes regardless of what the applicant wants that would, there's some obvious changes that would satisfy your position.
Oh, no, thank you.
Well, yeah, they could reduce the size of the addition. That would pull the work further away from the area. It would pull the fence line outside the 50-foot area.
What kind of stuff?
That's the other option.
Well, if they're 10 feet into the 50-foot, they pull it back 10 feet.
Is there a problem with that?
The size of the building is built on a mathematical model, and we are not interested in shrinking the size of the building. If we're not going to build it there, we're just going to build it somewhere else. The building is not the issue, it's the addition that is the issue. And that addition is to supply additional cultivation, which would supply in a second retail store and wholesale. And that money would be going to Wareham, or it can be going to another town. So that's
Not our
really,
topic.
Yeah,
I understand that, but that is the issue.
yeah, just, it's hard for me to believe that a 10-foot reduction, which you could possibly make up some of which, changing the shape a little, would be enough to, I don't know, does it kill the sale of the property? You know? I don't know. I think I know you've made some concessions before you came here within the wetlands, but I'd like to see some effort on design change.
Here's the, this is the
Been
plan,
down that road
this is the
before.
plan that we would go to.
I don't even need to see that, Bill.
And that plan affords none of the things that we would be spending on the resources in developing. There'd be no stormwater management because we're not required to put it in. There would be no groundwater recharge because we're not required to do it. There would be no stormwater basin in treatment of peak flows and peak rates of runoff because we don't have to do it. And I'd prefer not to, point that out, but that's, you asked for a plan and, I don't like the way it's coming across from me to you guys because that's not the way I operate, and you know that. But that's a plan you asked for.
Right, so in this situation, the site would be similar to what it is now.
No improvement.
Right, but maintaining the area as it is, as far as no further encroachment. And again, this is without looking at certain issues in terms of stormwater structures under the pavement, things of that nature. So again, he's throwing this out because he's trying to push you to approve the other project. But again, there hasn't been a whole lot of work looking into this as far as what could be done. Now, if they don't need to do it, it's not a requirement, then they don't have to do it. So,
But I'd prefer, myself, is the pride and authorship of the local bylaw, is that the thing that's getting in the way of an environmental improvement that can occur on the site that has virtually zero negative to it? The only thing that's negative is it doesn't match up to one's interpretation of the bylaw. I think it's pretty clear cut that it.
I have a question. I have a plan here, and I have lines around the building with circles on them, and I have lines with squares on them. Can you tell me what's what?
Which plan are we looking at?
I have the big one, grading and drainage. There's lines that have circles.
Which number was that?
Sorry. 5 of 8. Five of 8. I must have, if you notice, there's something that has squares with, lines with squares on them, is that it? No, outside, keep going. In the 50-footer.
the erosion control and the fence basically are the two lines I think she's looking at.
At the top of the plan.
This right here.
Nope, keep going, keep going, keep going. No, to your right, to your right, to your
Right there.
Right
right. You
here.
got it.
One is the erosion control barrier.
The one with the square is the erosion control,
Yes,
and then the one with the circle is the fence.
correct.
Now, where I see the fence where your finger was just, how much trees will be cut from there to the top of the lot line? How much trees will be cut? Because that fence was quite a bit into the forested area. There will be some clearing, right?
Yes. So from, it's about 100 feet
Okay.
from here to here. Actually, the clearing is shown by that clouded area. And
Okay, so
yes,
it would be cleared back to the clouded area?
right to here.
Okay. Darn. Any more questions from the board?
I still think it's, I'd rather see some erosion control, some drainage control. Excuse me, I'm diabetic,
He needs to get his sugar up.
to leave it the way it is, and looking at what you're proposing here with the drainage, the added drainage and everything that you're doing, I think is an improvement to the site. Okay, that site was developed way back when, quite a few years ago, so things have changed a little bit, and you are improving it. I don't see a problem with it myself. The fence is going to keep any debris from going in wetland area. It's a plus. So, in my opinion.
Anybody in the audience wants to speak for or against this project? I'm seeing none.
Is everybody going to be ready to vote?
I'm ready.
Before I make a motion to close the hearing?
Okay, close the hearing.
Okay, I make a motion to close the hearing.
Second?
All in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstained? Hearing is closed.
Yeah, I'm going to make a motion to, in the positive for this. So if somebody wants to say anything different than that, then I'll cede to let them make the motion, but I see nobody, so I'll make a motion that we approve this project as on the paper. Reluctantly about the fence. But that's my motion with the standard conditions.
We have a motion and a second to approve the project as presented. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
I'm gonna go with aye on the favor. I think I'm comfortable with the fact that the upgrades are better than the way it stands and the way it will continue. It stands just the way
I
it
didn't
is.
even need to see.
No.
Sales pitch work.
That's the alternative.
It's been approved 500.
But fresh.
Okay, thank you very much for your time, appreciate it.
Thank you.
I guess your next step is planning,
Answering Charlie's letter in zoning board of appeals.
zoning.
Yep,
Do you want
okay, thank you.
Kenny, did you want to, you got
No, I got one.
I knew that.
The next hearing is Mercy Brum. We have a request to
Continue it?
no, I'll find the request. It's in our packet to withdraw. So we have a request to withdraw this, so we need a vote to accept, is that right? We need a vote to,
To accept the withdrawal.
we need a vote to accept the withdrawal of Robert Brum.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Gone. Okey dokey. So. The like to bring up the Preservation Association Dock Committee. Come forward and identify yourselves, please.
Oh, this is not going to be quick.
Good evening.
Yes.
My name is John Milosowski. I'm a member of the Preservation Association Dock Committee. With me is Wally Fignon, also a member of the Preservation Association Dock Committee. And in the audience, there are 2 additional members of the Preservation Association Dock Committee.
Thank you. We have in our packet the dock edition that's under discussion. This is a discussion. There'll be no vote or no vote on it. It's just they're going to present their request and see where we go with that, correct?
Yes.
Mr. Bichette, did you have any comments to start with?
To start with, this discussion revolves around a pier project that was previously approved by the commission some years ago. When this development was made, it was supposed to be a common pier for the lot owners for this development. And at the time, the commission approved the project, but conditioned that the dock only be used as a dinghy dock. At the time, the applicant did not want to go through the permitting that was required to do something that would be considered a marina. And the area is really not zoned for that anyway, so they opted to go for the common pier to be used as a dinghy dock and agreed to that, and that's how the thing was conditioned, and it's been that way ever since. The owners now are requesting a discussion to consider alterations to that, which would allow boats to be moored there at the pier or provide slips for boats to stay at the pier versus how it was originally conditioned and approved. So that's the purpose of tonight's discussion.
Mr. Bichette, thank you. And thank you for taking time to listen to our proposal for an addition or a discussion for an addition. The packet in front of you will talk a little bit about the Preservation Association. I think those are important facts as we move forward. And I'll try to be as brief as possible. The Preservation Association provides a structure and management. If you'll turn to your next slide, the one that is the aerial showing Lot 16, Map 54. It should be the one that, if on your chart, mine's a little smaller because it has my notes, but it should look just like that. Thank you. Right. So the Preservation Association is an organization providing management for 26 acres of community property. That property is bounded on 2 sides by the 10 single-family homes that currently own that Preservation Association land. The dock committee, you can look on yours, and on yours you'll see the dock. It appears in the left-hand corner of the property. The dock committee consists of 6 individuals who paid for the construction of the dock and who have managed the dock since 2015 and have the sole use of that dock. So we'll be talking about 2 organizations, and even as we go through to the ideas, that'll have a bearing. This is the discussion, our reason for coming, and Dave summarized it to a certain degree. But right now, there's a risky and necessary operation required for us to get from the dock to the dinghy, from the dinghy, crawl on board a ship, and go out for the day and repeat that again. Over the period, the dock has been in operation since 2005, and over that period, we've had several people fall from the dinghy into the water, either trying to get on board their boat or trying to go from the dinghy back onto the dock. So that's part of what's precipitated the discussion this evening. Second is, I think, since 2005, the people in the dock now are all 15 years older. And so when it was originally permitted and it seemed to make sense, has become increasingly more difficult for those people to do. What our discussion involves are 2 things. Right now, there's an order of condition that says that dock will only be used as a dinghy dock. The other is a conservation bylaw which stipulates that the float, and I'll talk a little bit about float later on, and I apologize, it was necessary for me to learn the technology, so I'm going to walk you through it. But our discussion will only focus on the float. It won't focus on some of the other areas. If you'll turn to the next page. I think David summarized it well. He said the dock was built in 2005. We are not requesting, actually, let me have you go to the next slide. The next aerial will help, I think, explain some of the pieces and what we're actually asking to do. So we are not requesting any change to the pier, which is that part that crosses the wetlands and crosses the marsh. We are not requesting any change to the ramp or the gangway that goes from the pier down to the float. Our discussion is simply about the small piece that runs parallel to the shoreline called the float, and those three pieces together we're referring to as a dock. Next page. As we started looking at it, looking at part of the reason how it was permitted, we found that there were actually some conservation positive points to our proposal, if you will, or to our proposal to discuss. A couple of things. The concern is about turbulence for boats coming to and from the dock. What we're proposing would actually cut those trips in half. If you think about it, right now what happens is we go to the dock, we get on a dinghy, go out to the boat, motor the boat to the dock to pick up equipment and passengers, then go out for the day's boating. At the end of the day, we return the passengers and material and equipment to the dinghy dock. Then we turn around again, disrupting that water again to bring that boat out to the mooring. The proposal will allow us to tie the vessels directly to the dock, which means that day trip now will simply mean leaving the dock, spending the day on the water, returning to the dock. So instead of 4 trips, it will involve only 2. Probably the other that's worth considering, I think, is something called light chain swing. And that occurs when the boat is on the mooring, and from the mooring ball down to the heavy chain is a piece of equipment called a light chain. And that boat swinging in the wind 360 degrees disturbs roughly 120 feet of bottom. It's a circle with a diameter equal to roughly the depth of the water at low tide, and it's 6 feet there. So you can do the arithmetic, and it actually disturbs a pretty fair amount of that. If we take the boats off of the mooring, and Mr. Pichette and I talked about eliminating the mooring, I'm not going to suggest that only because the mooring is where people typically tie their boats during heavy weather. So, but if we remove them from the mooring, put them onto the dock, that swing is significantly reduced. So there's those 2 things I think are conservation positive events that occur as a result of what we want to talk about. So if you'll turn to the next page. The next page is the locus map, and I think the point I'd like to bring up here is that it will have a very, very limited impact on the recreational shoreline of Wareham. A couple of reasons. The project in question is a mile up the Weweantic River, and the Weweantic River is not heavily used for recreational boating for 2 reasons. The shoreline on both sides is private property. One is private property in Wareham. Across the river is private property in Marion. Secondly, the Weweantic is probably a hazardous and difficult river to negotiate. So the occasional recreational boater is very seldom uses the Weweantic as an area for recreational boating. All right, next page. Navigation impact, which we'll talk about. The Wareham bylaws, conservation bylaws, require that any dock, whether it's a dinghy dock or what we're proposing here, has to be 100 feet from the navigation channel. If you'll take a look there, I took the Google's map and highlighted the channel marker. Gary Buckmaster and I did the measurements, and right now we're over 300 feet from the channel. And the two suggestions that you're going to see, both of those will still be well over 200 feet from the navigation channel. So the impact will have no impact on the navigation channel at all. The next page, again, talks to a conservation bylaw, and that's a bylaw that says that the dock cannot extend further than 200 linear feet from the mean high water mark. And that map will show, if you'll take a look closely, you'll see something that's marked MHW 1.9. That's the mean high water mark. What you're looking at, by the way, just to give it some credibility, these are the as-built that were created for the dock. So there's nothing here that is arbitrary. These are the ones that are on file. But if you take a look at that, it's 1.9 is where that mark is. The existing dock from there is 101.2 plus 28.6, or roughly 120, not roughly, exactly 129.8. So the things that you will see in the next couple of pages, you'll see extensions into the navigation channel and extensions to that dock, and none of those will exceed that 200-foot level. All right? Next, what I want to do is talk a little bit about our approach and the reason for it, not to confuse the issue, but hopefully to clarify it. So right now, the Preservation Association consists of 9 people that may have an interest in the dock sometime in the future. Now, understand that the activity occurred since 2005, and 6 people since 2005 have actually paid the dues and the cost associated with the dock to become a member of the dock committee. However, there are 9 people, and part of our approach is to create an approach that should they be interested in conservation approve, it would make changing just in the nature of the neighborhood that much easier. So let me go through the 2 ideas, and I'll explain to you what we're talking about. So the next page, I hope, is a picture of the 9-vessel dock. All right, a couple of things that we talked about. The green part is the addition. It's only to the float. You'll see there the float is in dark gray. You see the ramp, and then you see the very, very beginnings of the pier there. So the first one will permit mooring 9 vessels into that area. Now, the interesting point is it's made for 9, and it worked out well in our situation because 10 vessels becomes a marina. The state actually has something defined as a recreational marina. The Wareham bylaws have no such designation. But if it gets to 10, then it becomes a state issue of a marina. We had no need for 10. The way that the state DEP had suggested is shorten one of the stalls so that only 1 vessel can get in there and leave the rest for small dinghies. So the 9-vessel is, if you take a look at it, it's there. That would allow anybody interested at any time in the future to get a spot on the dock, if you will. The next one is current state. And the current state is there are 6 people that belong to the dock today. So the next design is designed to accommodate 6 people. And if you flip between the 2 designs, you'll see that in order to go from 6 to 9 would be the addition of a T that would go out from the 6 and allow the 6 to accommodate 3 more vessels. So what we're asking is, before we spend a great deal of money for engineering and come before you officially, and we're certainly prepared to do that, it will take some consideration about the 300 square foot limit on docks. And there's one other point I guess I would like, or maybe two other points I would like to make for the committee right now. The bylaw pertains to single-family as well as someone approaching you with 6 vessels or 9 vessels. So me as an individual with a single-family dwelling, I get 300 square feet of dock area. What we're proposing is actually putting six vessels in that, accommodating 6 vessels. And if you take a look at the drawings, I actually marked on it, in the 6 vessel, it's 712 square feet in order to accommodate 6 vessels. So that's one thing I think that is relevant to the discussion. Secondly, is that there have been in the past, and I'll apologize here, I didn't have the due diligence to look at Conservation Commission bylaws and construction plans, but there are in the community, community docks. There's one in, I think, a place called Pleasant Cove, where they've done a similar thing, and my understanding that it's been very successful. That one there, actually, from the Google Maps overview, had 11 boats on it. So what we're asking to discuss is, if we come to you with engineering plans, is it a waste of our money to spend it only to be rejected for the 300-foot? Because I don't believe there's any other conservation bylaw that requires an exception for us to pursue this approach. And with that, I'll be quiet and take questions.
My first question on the 9-boat float. When you do the 6-boat float, you're putting 2 boats on the outside.
Correct.
What's to keep that from just naturally happening and making this at 9 and 10? It's just.
Well, in order to go to 9, we'd need another T. Let me kind of, so there's the 6, all right, and it will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, with 2 boats being outside.
So we're still intending to have 2 on the outside. The reason is that there's one that's smaller for 1 boat. So that smaller section, the 20-foot, is only going to have 1 boat. Right? Is it?
No, that's good. On the 9, it goes 1, that's a smaller stall, all right? And then 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and again, it would require 2 to be on the outside.
If I'm reading this right, it's 24 feet, so your boats can't be much more than 10 feet wide. Beam, sorry, the beam is 10, is that the right word? Beam is 10 feet?
It is, and the answer is yes, probably the largest right now. You know, it's not a crazy wealthy community. The largest right now is about 9.5 feet beam, is the largest boat that is there among the members. So the answer is yes, Sandy. It would require, there's 24 feet, which leaves 12 feet between the boat, and probably a foot each for the floats. So.
And for the bumpers.
But, yeah.
And for the bumpers.
Correct. When I said float, I meant the bumpers, the fenders.
Fenders.
Yeah, that's what they're called.
What's the right word? Fenders or bumpers, I'm sorry.
Right, that's okay, me too. I call them floats, so. So that's the, go ahead, I'm sorry.
What's the depth of water under this proposed docks?
So, in order to have the first one permitted, we had to guarantee 2 feet of water below the lowest part. So right now, on the existing drawing, below here, right here, that is, I do it myself, it's probably 2.5 feet, but in order to get permitted before, it had to be at least 2 feet below the bottom of the float. Here, we've had a sailboat there that drafted 5.5. So there was no problem getting that sailboat in at low tide.
I'm sorry, I interrupted you. I'm thinking the size of the boats that you have now, are they expected to increase in size. I mean, it's one of those things that if I get myself into a inboard and I start it up, it's always going to kick down as it starts up, and I'm worrying about if you have enough water to accommodate that when you start your motor or an inboard.
Or,
Yeah.
yeah. So I guess the easy answer is, even with our most extreme design, we are 30 feet below what is required by the bylaws.
Okay.
So I could widen those to 15 feet or 20 feet to accommodate a larger boat for future. Our approach was to try to be conservative, but that's a simple plan, and it's actually, more generous than we came in with.
Questions, other questions?
I do. How many moorings have you 9 people have in the river?
It's a good question. I'm going to count them if I can. Let me just, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Connie's counting, so she'll probably beat you.
There's 5 or 6.
So I
No, it's
really
more than
love
that.
the idea that,
Yeah,
they're
there's more than that.
I would think there were more than that, but I like the idea that it's a group of people on one dock. However, I really think that you're sort of double dipping.
That you're,
Double dipping with your moorings.
okay,
You want 9 places here and 9 moorings, and then, that whole thing of you doing a community dock is sort of negated because, people in the community want moorings. And I understand danger with storms and everything. You're pretty far in the river, but, I don't know, I sort of have a little bit of an issue. It's like,
Some,
no,
some of the moorings would go away, though, just because they would, these floats would actually overpass like 2 or 3 of them.
and let me, first, it's a good point. The other, I think, relevant is where the moorings are, we didn't have any difficulty because everything around there is private property. And for someone to get to a mooring, for example, in the area that we're talking about, is probably a good, I'm going to guess, I don't have, I'm going to try to get to a drawing that gives me a little bit better idea. So that's 300 feet. Probably for someone to want a mooring in the area where we are, they would have to be prepared to row 500 or 600 feet to their mooring. You're right.
that happens all the time, and, you have little motors that you put on, and so on. It's just an issue for me.
But to address your concern, I agree with you. It wouldn't make sense to have 9 slips and 9 moorings.
No.
That wouldn't be fair.
People are waiting in town
Right.
for more.
And that wouldn't, I can assure you that wouldn't be the case. Exactly what number would be given up, I'm not sure, but it would definitely not be 9 and 9. I just had a question for Dave, because you obviously could shed some more light on this. My understanding is that the original developer or builder, there was 10 members. So he felt as though if he actually included the entire neighborhood or community, he would have had to have gone to a marina. It would have had to have been 10. He never knew at the point when he was still involved that there was one individual that was never going to join, or one household that was never going to join. I think if he probably knew that and only had 9, he may have gone to the extent of trying to put the slips in and go through the permitting process and everything else. But I don't think he could have done that because he would have been excluding one of the potential buyers or one of the unit owners. And that's what we've been able to do, is that one person has come forward and said they're not interested in being part of it or joining it.
The current owner.
Right, the current owner. But I think at the time, as you mentioned, he was looking at 10 lots, regardless of who the owners were or could be in the future. That's how he had to look at it. And so that's why he made the decision that he did.
To go with the dinghy dock, which makes sense.
Number of boats are owned by each individual.
Right.
Let's face it, if you have a mooring and a slip, and you've got your motorboat, and you also want a sailboat, now you've got your mooring full and your slip full. And pretty soon you got 18 boats.
Right.
I mean, I think those are all valid points. And, you know, at this point, we have 6 that are there. There was a reluctance to give up the mooring. When David and I talked about it, you know, my initial reaction was, you know, we just give up the moorings. And then there was concern on some of the owners that in heavy weather, it's better to do it that way. So, you know, certainly if this board recommends that we do it, we'll go back to the membership and propose that to them and see where they are with respect to giving up a mooring or agreeing not to request a mooring.
Double up.
So.
Who owns the moorings?
There are 6 that are owned by, there are 5 that are owned by the members of the dock committee, and there's another that is owned by one of the residents of the Preservation Association who is not a member of the dock committee.
Who permits the placement of the moorings?
The harbor master.
I just want to make sure the harbor master. So if these are removed, nothing can go back until the harbor master approves it.
That's correct.
I'm
Understood.
looking at the property on Hamilton Beach that faces this particular site. I was thinking they could very well find, oh, now I got a mooring where I didn't have before. I mean, I'm just thinking there's homes in Hamilton that are very
Not
close
Hamilton,
to Briarwood, sorry,
yeah.
wrong. The one with all the President Streets, Briarwood.
That is,
Awful
yeah.
close to this particular site that you're talking about. And if these moorings were to be given up, I would expect that Mr. Buckminster might very well permit some replacements to accommodate those homeowners in
think
Briarwood.
It's Briarwood, yes. I actually, when you said that, it's like the floats thing. But I think we'll have discussions with the harbor master as the process goes through. We have already 3 times when we talked about the design of the docks and the use of making sure that we didn't get in the channel. I think that's an agreement. You know, he's an employee of the town, and once it's agreed, you know, he is the enforcement authority there. So, you know, we should be able to manage that.
Yeah, I don't see that giving up a mooring is actually all that hard.
No.
You don't get a lot of heavy weather. I live on the other side of the peninsula. I live on Mattapoisett.
Okay.
The weather comes over me to you. You know?
Yeah.
And you have a lot less water on that side. So I would think that if you had a storm coming, that you were worried about that, you're pulling your boat anyway.
Pulling it out, yeah. That's what I was saying.
I think so too, and I talked to the people at Atlantic Boat, and a few of them that lived in Marion actually motored up the Weweantic and dropped anchor because they believed it was safer than where they were, you know, in the town of Marion.
Yeah.
So it's a discussion. I don't feel at liberty to speak with all 5 or with all 6 without a discussion, but it certainly is, you know, as we go forward, if that's one of the things that you require, it's certainly something we'll talk with.
Okay, any other questions on the board? Joe, we haven't heard from you, nothing? Kenny?
I have a question for David. When we permitted this dock originally,
Who, I'm sorry?
He's
when
talking to
this was permitted, it was permitted as a dinghy dock.
Yes.
Yeah.
So why were they allowed to bring the big boats in to the dinghy dock? That confuses me.
Well, I think just to put people on the boat and materials, there was no prohibition that said no large boat could approach the dock. It's just meant that no boats could be moored to the dock.
Tied overnight. Tied up overnight.
Okay, not just, I was just, you know.
So one of the concerns you have is the square footage of the dock.
Right, so the bylaw does say that there's a 300 square foot max on the floats. Obviously, this would be way more than that, what they're asking for. So that's something that, you know, again, in my position, I have to recommend that the commission stick to what the bylaw requires.
Would it be worthwhile to look at the other community docks that exist? I'm trying to think where they are.
Well, you have to also realize that some of those could have been put in place prior to this bylaw being in place. So we don't know that either. So if that was the case, then they would not have had that restriction at that time.
And I guess the other thing I would ask you to consider is that that bylaw applies to a single-family residence. So one person could get 300 square feet and provide that much shadow. And if all 10 of the people applied within the bylaws, it's 3,000 square feet of dock area. So, you know, I don't think, I think what we're requesting is actually, in some ways, helps eliminate some of the issue as opposed to create situations where people feel, you know, geez, you know, I can have my own dock and get 300 square feet.
Yeah, but I don't think that's the case here, because none of you have waterfront property, you know? So you wouldn't get 10 docks on this one piece of land.
It's probably true, Dave.
Right.
But I'm saying, just assuming that that's the case, a community dock as a community, as a town, I think has some merit.
Okay, all right. Comments from the board. I mean, the question is whether or not we're going to say to this applicant, go forward and come back with a engineering plan, or don't bother. Is that the question that has to be asked? That's what they're looking for, is whether or not it'd be worth their while to bring up the complete documentation needed to apply for 6 to 9 docks at this one communal pier.
Right, and that's the general question that they're looking to get a response on. But what I would say is the commission doesn't have to give a response right now, tonight. You can take some time to look at the information that you have and maybe come back at the next meeting and, or not even at a meeting, just give your thoughts on it, and those thoughts can be conveyed to the person who's here for the discussion. So, the point I'm making is you're not obligated to make a response right now, tonight. You can look at the information, then decide what you want to do, or you could give them a response tonight if you feel like you're ready. That's your call to make.
My response, I'll give you my response. That was permitted as a dinghy dock for a reason. This time we let them expand it, and then they'll come back again and expand it some more and expand it. No, that was permitted as a dinghy dock for a reason. I was sitting on that.
If I may respond, clearly with every expansion, whoever's proposing that expansion will come before this board again. What I would suggest is if 6 or 9 is what you believe is a reasonable amount, then agree to 6 or 9, and any subsequent requests, you know, it's within the prerogative of this board to say, no, that's 1 per resident. That is not, I don't think, an unreasonable position to say 1 per resident should be the maximum, and don't visit us again. But to do it, you know, did you want me to wait?
Connie wants to speak.
Oh.
I will recognize her when you're done.
Well, and, you know, since she's the head of the house, I'll be quiet.
You have to stop.
I just had a question.
Connie, come up and into the mic so we're on recorded.
Connie Wolzowski, I'm also part of the dock committee. You said that when it was built as a dinghy dock, it was done so for a reason. We don't know what that reason was. We think it was because the developer didn't have the funds at the time to actually, so if it's recorded somewhere why that was a dinghy dock, then that's something. But if it's just because at the time the person, you know, that was what he had to build. At the time he built, that was long before we came to the area, there were 10 lots, but there were only, and Wally, you were one of the first people there were only 2 or 3 homes built at that time, at the time when the dock was built. So we don't know why exactly it was just a dinghy dock, other than it probably cost a lot less money to do that.
And that's why I was asking Dave's opinion, because he went through it with the builder. I think it was because he was very aware of 10 or more becomes a marina.
And it's a special license, everything else, and I don't think he knew whether 10 were actually gonna join or not, and he didn't wanna spend all those funds not knowing who was gonna join or who was gonna be part of it. But I think if he knew at that time that 6 or 9 out of the 10 were a definite, he probably would have moved forward and tried to get the permitting for the boat slips. And that's my assumption, but we really don't know.
But the thing is, back when that came up, okay, I was fairly young on the board. My predecessors that aren't here anymore argued the fact of there's a water deck and the area and something, and that's why the term dinghy dock was put on that.
Well, I think it had to do with the amount of boats in one given location.
Area.
Yeah.
I'm not against community docks. When I came on this board, I hated docks, and for somebody to consolidate them so you don't have 15 docks instead of that, I've got no problem with that. But what bothers me, like I said, is the fact that that was put on that was put on that for a reason, and Dougie and
So
they had their reasons for doing that.
they should
pushing
pull the
that.
minutes of the Conservation Commission meetings
approved.
associated with the discussion of this particular project, if we can remember when the meetings were. They're in there.
Well, we have information about when the meetings were, so I don't think that's
But
so much of an issue.
looking at the minutes.
But again, things are different now than what they were then too. We have a bylaw that's different now.
Yeah,
And
I understand that.
so-
But I think Kenny's saying what made it happen the way it did.
Right, I think the way it was for several reasons. One, the developer didn't want to go through the permitting process because it was going to cost more money.
Right.
That's definitely true. There was also consideration of the boat traffic in a small zone, okay, in one given area like that. There was discussion of the coverage of the space itself with floats and boats if it were to be constructed that way. So all those things were kicked around at the time, and, you know, I probably would say it leaned towards the dinghy dock mostly because of the developer didn't want to pay for the whole marina business.
Right.
And so that was probably one of the main reasons, but the other issues were also discussed as part of it, and since he decided he wasn't gonna do it, those all just went away because it wasn't gonna be an issue anyway.
Right.
But those issues were all discussed at the time.
There's a lot of advantages that we obviously see, and it's because of the position we're coming from, I'm sure, but, you know, to consolidate all of them, I mean, the extent of the, you know, that access road going through the wetlands, the areas, the vegetation, none of that has to be touched, none of it has to be modified. You know, we don't have to cross any more wetlands, that's all been done, and we're consolidating everything to just one location, I think is a huge advantage.
Well, the only thing I would say too, that the commission should take some time to think about is there are certain things that have been brought up already that you don't have any control over, okay? So the harbor master is the one who dictates if moorings will be placed there or not. So just because you guys decide you're not gonna put a boat on that mooring doesn't mean the harbor master can't give that space to somebody else for a mooring.
Correct.
And you do have the issue potentially, and again, I'm not saying it's your intent, but somebody, let's say you sell your house, another guy comes in, he can put one boat here and one on a mooring. You know, there's nothing restraining that. So you could end up with more boats there than what
Understood.
there is. So this is what the board has to consider as far as how they're gonna weigh on this particular issue, so.
No, thank you. I mean, the conversation has been good, and I can't deny the points that you make. The only other thing that I can think of, 15 years ago, we were all much more agile than we
Yeah.
are today, so that...
I know that.
Do you have a comment, sir? Did I see a hand raised? Come forward and identify yourself.
It's time for me to leave. Hi, I'm Bob Eulis. I'm one of the last members of the association. But I've had a boat. I got a mooring 4 years ago. I just built my house last year, but I was coming down to use my boat. I run my depth, and if the depth is a concern, and I'm sure the harbor master can verify this, but I can tell you right at the end of the existing dinghy dock, probably 4 feet out, it drops off like crazy. So it gets very deep, very deep, probably 10, 12.
Yeah, and I actually think those drawings, I do have those drawings. I didn't think to bring them, but with the as-built, there's a depth, and Bob's right. It goes from 2 feet, and then at the end of the dock, it drops off significantly.
Starts falling off like a rock.
So,
So all these additional floats, they will be in deep water.
In deep water. I guess the big concern is the square footage of the dock area with our bylaws, and
that's something the commission, as I said, it's gonna have to think about and make your comments known, but again,
So-
think about it and bring back your
any
opinion.
comments?
Express my concern.
Okay.
On one separate note, not related to this, while you're here, we do have a previous violation with regards to the cutting work that was done. You were supposed to come in and file a notice of intent for that work. That's never been done.
We hired Gaff Engineering, Brian, we signed a contract, he was out doing all the drawings and said he was gonna take care of that.
Yeah, that never happened, and this has gone on for a couple of years now, so you need to get in contact with him to get that issue squared away.
Okay. Yeah, because I bought specific markers for him to actually mark out the easement that we have and everything else, so that wouldn't happen again.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Anything
I'll
else?
take care of that.
All right, thank you.
And I would just add, I have no problem giving up my mooring. And would sign something to say I'd never put another one in there. But
I think that, what David said about you and us not having a whole lot of control over a few of these options, is certainly something to weigh as you decide whether you want to spend some money. And possibly the other thing is if you get opinions from us, which is essentially what you're asking for, I certainly couldn't advise you to spend money thinking that those opinions are a pre-approval.
And thank you. I think we do recognize that. I think our point, and Sandy identified it, there seems to be just one issue. The definition of the dinghy dock really is not defined in the bylaws. So the only issue is that the limit on the 300 square feet.
Well, I don't know how they define a marina. That is, and if it's a geographical location, and because marinas can have moorings as well as part of the marina do your moorings add to the, I don't know the answer to this, but do your moorings, would your moorings add to the addition of your 9 spaces and thus now qualifying you as an actual marina?
Yeah, I think, David, the only thing that I've read, and I'll have to turn to David with respect to Wareham, there is no definition of a residential marina in the bylaws that we have to date.
Right.
The state does make that definition.
Therefore, we use the states. If we have nothing in ours, we're silent on the topic, we go to the state bylaw.
Okay. Right. And that I did read before I came in, and they defined something 10 or greater as a marina. And to my knowledge, and I'll go back,
Slips, not slip sand moorings.
I was gonna finish.
I know that I pulled in many times in what our marinas have been put on a hook for the evening, and it's all part of them. And I don't know what would make that true here. Certainly if you go into a cove in Maine and there's docks and hooks, you deal with the same organization, you pay the same people to stay in whichever place they stick you.
I'll tell you what I'll be happy to do. As a part of the process, the state invites...
Yeah, I think, I'm sorry,
Tired?
I think we've had the same repeating discussions, if you don't mind. We have a couple more things to do before we
No.
can adjourn for the evening, so.
So do you have some direction for us, I guess is how I would ask to summarize.
Sure, not immediately.
I'm sorry?
I would think not.
They're gonna get back to you.
Okay. And thank you. Thanks for the time.
Thank you. David, I did send you a copy of the contract that I signed with Gaff
Howie, was there anything you wanted?
I think so, but nothing ever came up.
Okay, we have minutes from November 7th.
Because the four of us that share the Vista Cruise, I think
Motion approved.
sorry about that. If I
Motion.
had known, I would have definitely followed up on it.
I have a motion to approve the minutes of
Alyssa was the only one that was
November
not
7th.
here.
Second, Alyssa was not here, so we have all in favor. Aye, opposed, abstained. 401. Anything else? If not, I'd like to have I'd like to have those good words.
We're all set on the enforcement stuff, David?
There's nothing new there.
Nothing new? Okay, motion to adjourn?
Second.
Oh, I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye, opposed, abstained. 9:12, and I'm sorry.
No, it's not your fault.